Went and took a break, relaxed for a little bit. Now we're gonna keep going. What I do like is that Ford, Chevy, and Dodge have all now went over to this style of puller, which is very nice. When you work on everything, makes a difference. Only got to buy one. Had these wrenches since I was a kid. A lot of people won't recognize them. These are old Craftsman. Bought these when I was like 16. They're valve wrenches is what they're made for, but they're that narrow set. They only made them in American at that time. I don't know if they came out with metric ones since then, but they're just double opened in. But they're quite a bit narrower. Like, you know. So they work really good getting in places that you need to. Let's trying to figure out the size so I knew what wrench to grab. You know what you gonna do with a cowboy? That old rooster crows at dawn. I ain't in bed. I'm getting out of bed. And on his boots and getting gone. Says, honey, and I got half a mind to stay. Hey, honey. What'd you do with the 10mm deep 1/4" drive?
Was it in the blue bucket?
I pulled the blue bucket down. I don't see it in there.
It's the one that was in the blue bucket.
Oh, it's in there. I'm just blind. I'm stupid. Sorry. I apologize. All right, so for this thing to be on top dead center, for number one, which on a Ford, this is number one. I had the, you want to bring it down in here, honey, where I can show it a little bit better. This is the timing mark for a Ford, that dot on an overhead cam. You can barely see it on this corner right here. That little dot goes straight down. This TDC, and I have the valve covers off so I can check my lifters and my rockers to see where I'm at. Oh. What just exploded? I think I got a bad cam phaser. Or that's the bleed off for him. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Okay, so I think I'm now too far. It's supposed to be like right there. So Ford has a tool that actually bolts on, uses that dowel pin and that bolt hole to line it up. Perfect. I'm more of a, I can usually get it close enough. Yeah, that's straight down. So on Fords, should be, if you run this in line, your left cam phaser's there. This one's going to say right down here. That's intake. And then I think the other arrow is exhaust, which technically that L. But so should be getting close right there. Off the intake, exhaust is up. So that should be correct. Yay. All right. Now that that's done, we're going to pull this tensioner and pull this tensioner. Cams are going to flop and move a little bit. There's a couple different ways you can go about it. Then make a tool that bolts on and holds it. You can grab a pair of channel locks right here behind the gear. A lot of people grab channel locks and hold them right there to stop them from moving so much, everything like that. I'm going to do that because I need to break this bolt loose and that bolt loose on both sides for the cam phasers, which I need to do before I pull the chains off. And if I recall correctly, I think they're a 17. I know they're not, they're a 15. These are torque to yield bolts. You're not supposed to use them more than once. If you go to replace these cams or cam phasers, you need to put new bolts in it. Do not buy anything on cam phasers other than factory forged. Save yourself the hassle and the issues. I've seen so many aftermarkets, they last 10,000 miles and they fail. You put brand new Ford ones on there and they last another 100,000 miles. And that's, I would say on average, what you're going to get out of a set of 3-valve cam phasers, 100,000 miles. Just, yeah. Nope, they're not going to fit in there. Okay. We're going to do it Bill's way. All right. These cam tensioners or chain tensioners that I have are the 90s style, which people that know about Ford cam followers in the 90s. I'm going to get it out. In the 90s, they made all metal ones. And that's what these are. I don't like the plastic ones. These are not super expensive. There is, I forget the company, I'll have to look it up, we'll add it in text. The company that makes those for Ford still makes them. Ford updated their stuff and they say to use the plastic ones now. I found out who the manufacturer was. They still make them. They're, I think it's $80 for the set. And the metal ones are way better. They don't bleed off pressure as bad. They don't warp. And the guys that are into Fords know what I'm talking about. I think Ford Motorsports or whatever it's called now, Ford Racing, Ford Power Sport, I don't know. I call it Ford Racing. That's what I grew up with it being. You know, when you bought the letter cams for 302s, the high output stuff, that was all Ford Motorsports. That's what it was. That's what it was called. I think it's all Ford Racing now is what they call it or something, but they I don't know. I haven't seen where they sell these again, but they may. A lot of the times when you pop these out, the cams will move. Which if they do usually just like that. That's what happens. So you just got to remember that so that when you put it back together, you know where they're supposed to be oriented. So these, I have the pins. If you actually look at these, they have a lock on them. You actually have to push this down and you have to turn this lock sideways once you have this down. And then there's that hole right there. There's a metal pin that goes in. If you ever lose the pin, you can use an Allen key or something like that. It depends over there though. So to put these back in, grab my pick. And let me turn this sideways so I can show everybody. So you start to push this in, you see the ratchet mechanism. You actually have to push over to the side. And dude, that thing's getting hard to push. So, but once you can see how that went all the way down. Give me just a second. Let me relocate my pins. This is what the factory pins look like. You can get an Allen key that's that size. And that's how they lock in. And they're labeled right and left. They're hard to mess up, but it pushes all the oil out when you do it. That's why I tossed a rag in there, was just catch it. But that's how they are. depending on the year. Some of them, they come with the plates. You can put the plates on. You can run them without the plates. I run them without the plates because the plates have a small hole drilled in them, and I have not had good luck with them pumping up on the newer style motors. And what I mean by newer style motors, so Ford changed the design when they went to 4 valves from the B head. So talking C head and up stuff, so 99 and up stuff, not the Mark 8 stuff. So 99 and up basically is, I believe, when they changed it. So if you're running a B head, Teskin block is what I believe all those were, is there's a plate and it has an oil galley. And I think the oil galley is right here or right there. I don't remember. But it's a plate you can put in, and they're actually a different spacing. You can run them without it. It's not a huge issue. But that's how those work. That's why I buy the metal ones. They have the locking tab on them. And it allows it where once that ratchets out, even if you lose oil pressure and the plunger goes back down in, this actually catches the cam guide and keeps it up. So you're not losing it. The other thing that you can do, which we could have done, and I probably should have done it on one side for you guys, is that you are just trying to change lifters and cam followers and not swapping the cams or trying to pull the cam gears, is they make this tool, and you want to come over on this side. All right, so we're on cylinder 1. We should be TDC. If you use this tool, you're supposed to rotate them over onto TDC. You slide the tool in, you get it down onto the valve cover side on the other way, and on this one, take the little crow's foot. You want to slide it on top of the valve but under the cam follower. Like so. There one. Basically, you just push down, twist this down. When you twist this down, it's going to push the valve down. And it should push it down just enough you can get the cam follower out. And it's starting to go. It goes more, but my hands are slipping. So you can see, show the top of the valve. So right down in here, you can see that you can now see the top of the valve versus this one where you can't see any of it, that one. This one you can see the cam follower slides out that way. This one is all the way over. And that's how you take them out with the tool. Yep, there it went. It just popped up. So there's the cam follower. Then basically you just loosen this back up.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is a cam follower the same as a rocker arm?
Yes.
Why do they have two different names?
Because this is overhead versus an in block.
In block, it's a rocker arm.
Let me grab one and I'll show you the differences. We got one sitting over there. So this sets in. There's a lifter down underneath this cam, and we'll show it later on. It's way down there. But there's a lifter in the head, and that rides right here on this plunger. And this roller rides on this lobe. And as the cam lobe comes around, it pushes down and rockers off of the lifter. And that's how your valves open on this overhead cam setup. There's a couple different overhead cam setups, but it generally works off of leverage like this. Sometimes it's the lifter directly on top of the valve on some imports and stuff where you don't have a roller lifter like this. On a standard in-block cam is a way to put it. And I just happen to have stuff laying around. In block cam, you would have a roller lifter like this that rides on the camshaft, that same lobe. This push rod gets it all the way up into the head area where you're on top of the valve, and it rides just like that. On the forward, basically what they're doing is they put that ball on the top of the lifter, and the lifter sits like this. So as your cam elongates around and that lobe comes up, it's going to change the position of that rocker. And this is going to push down on the top of the valve. So that rocker arm, this cam wouldn't be here. That rocker arm would be setting in place of this follower and essentially do the same thing, except it would be bolted down. This is just the cams riding on top of it. And that's essentially what the differences are. That's why these are called cam followers. They follow the cam on what the cam profile does. So if you're just trying to swap out lifters and cam followers, you have one that's sticking, you have a bad lifter, you could use this tool and change that out. I'm pulling the cam, so it's not that big of a deal to me. Basically, once I loosened that up and the cam jumped, it made it work. I can loosen all this stuff up. I will probably use them to put them in, just because I don't want to mess anything up. But at the same time, I probably won't. So this is a nice tool, though, when you have it. There's a couple different ones. Some of the cheap ones don't work. This does not work as good as the OTC I've used. This was an Aries, but I think this was like 15 bucks, and the OTC was like 75. So, just food for thought. I do have new lifters and new cam followers I bought. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna go grab all that stuff and get that stuff ready, because we will be pulling these cams out, and I have these comp cams. Those who don't know, cams come with cam cards, so it'll tell you the specifications. This is like, you send this into comp, and this is telling them the grind numbers. This is the serial number or part number of the cam, and the serial number of the cam. So a lot of people you'll see post on the internet will post numbers like this, and they'll be showing how there's numbers on that cam, and this says something 0761-15-6 cc. It was an I, that's why I couldn't read it. 0761-15. The dash cc isn't there, but that is the serial number for that cam. So a lot of people will post those. The numbers you're actually wanting is going to be the 127000-9L. On Ford, it's 2 cams, L's left, R's right. So that serial number, though, is linked to that cam. So if you knew it was a comp cam, you could call them with that serial number. They could tell you what the cam was. Part numbers is how most people are going to be able to look it up. So, but this is going to tell you what your valve lift, intake, and exhaust are, what your tappet lift's going to be, what your valve timing at 50 thousandths duration is going to be, what your intake lobe separation angles are, duration at 50. This is your ultimate valve lift with your rocker arm ratio. And on like a standard in-block cam, it'll tell you if it's at 1.6, 1.6 to 1, if it's a 1.5 to 1, 1.7 to 1, depending on what it is. So if you got like a small block Ford, it's going to be 1.6 to 1. Most small block Chevys are going to be 1.5 to 1. But if you turn around and you put aftermarket lifters on it, or aftermarket rocker arms, so you go from a factory 1.5 to a 1.6, you always want to look at this cam card and see if they're telling you at a 1.5 or a 1.6, because if you go 1.6, you're going to be raising the cam lift on this. So this is a 450 438, I think, is factory lift on my cam, so it's not much more of a lift. Duration changes a lot on it. We go from a, I can actually tell you, give me 1 second. I want to believe I looked up factory specs. My factory specs. Okay. Intake on my aftermarket is 450. Factory on intake is 0.439. So I'm going up 0.011. Duration, I'm going from a 196 to a 253. My exhaust lift is going from 0.436 to 450. And my duration is going from a 221 to a 270. So these are very mild cams. These are made to be a drop-in. You are supposed to be able to still run them with cam phasing limiters that usually come with the kit when you buy them. I'm locking cams out completely. I don't want to run it anymore. I don't want to deal with the oil bleed off or any of that stuff. So I am just deleting that. So the duration and everything is not going to affect me as much as it would be. I could go a larger duration. I could win a larger lift. I got these cams retardedly cheap, new in box. Like they were still in the plastic wrappings and everything. And I bought them for like 1/3 what they should be. So that's what I'm going to shove in these, just because, excuse me, it was cheap and easy. And at the point that I was taking it apart to replace the cam phaser, it's not that much harder to pull the rocker arm. It is literally 10 more bolts and the entire cam comes out. Because of the miss I had, I figured I'd kicked a cam phaser. Or not a cam phaser, a cam follower, which I hadn't. But Ford Motorsports has an updated lifter and cam phaser setup. And that didn't come out till like 09, which I think was like the last year of the 3-valve. So I'm going to pull those parts out now, and we'll be able to look and see what the differences actually are. Because if I recall correctly, they put a smaller orifice hole for the oil on the lifter and the rocker cam follower. So we're going to take a break and go get that stuff and cool off a little bit. It's Arizona. It is 12:15 and it is 99 degrees already. High today is going to be like 106, which it was like 112 3 days ago. So I don't have an air-conditioned shop. I do have a swamp-cooled shop, which works very, very well, but only really when I get the door down. So when you come back, that door's probably going to be shut about 3/4 of the way, and I just have it for airflow. That's about it.